check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, sorry about the delay there. Thank y'all for being patient. All right. Again, my name is Matthew West. Most of y'all know me. Been in law enforcement for 25 years. Been in security, doing law enforcement and security concurrently. Security I've been doing for about 10, 15 years, off and on. Worked for state police out of Texas. I called Beverage Commission at the start of my career. Went over to Union Pacific Railroad Police, where I served as a special agent, doing a variety of things, patrolling the rail yards, executive protection with the CEOs, a variety of tasks. Worked K-9. I was a training coordinator. I ended up getting injured actually, and that's how I ended up here in Bastrop. I'm originally from San Antonio area. If anyone knows where Hondo, Texas is at, it's where I was raised. We moved here after I got hurt. Went back to work for the state. Ended up getting a school as a risk manager / safety director / security chief at a neighboring school district, and then ended up here. Currently I'm a police officer, training coordinator, and coordination manager for the Bastrop ISD Police Department, where I've been here going on 2 years now. So I really enjoy Bastrop, enjoy the community, enjoy the church community. Can I ask somebody to open us up in prayer, please? Any takers? Amen. Thank you very much. So this is some of the training I tell everybody that I hope we never have to use. This is the Civilian Response Force Active Attack Events. We call it CRAVE. As it started out, it was the Civilian Response for Active Shooter Encounters. But over the years, we realized that it's not just active shooters. It's really any type of critical incidents. You can be in a building that catches fire. You can be caught in a building. You know, we're seeing all these storm outbreaks in the Midwest and North Texas where these tornadoes are hitting places. So this is going to help you train on really what to do on any type of critical incident or emergency. So again, this course is centered toward active attack. So that's really what the core of this is going to be. But again, in your mind though, I want you to think of that, you know, anything can happen, right? I am the poster child of Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, will go wrong, and have the possibility of that at the worst possible moment. That's just my luck. So I'm always looking, I'm always thinking, every time I enter a building or go somewhere I've never been before, I'm scoping it out, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But we're going to define active attacks. Okay, what is the definition? An active attack event equals attempted mass murder. Bottom line. When we look at this type of training and how to survive an active attack event, we need to know that an active attack, whether it's with a firearm, a knife, a vehicle, we've seen that happen, right? New Orleans, Mardi Gras. We saw that with the guy running the truck in there. And I am going to silence my phone. Sorry about that. What is the profile of the attacker? Well, there actually is no given profile. It can be anybody. But a lot of times they have an avenger mindset. And their mind, they're going out to right a wrong. A lot of times that wrong they felt was geared toward them. It was a personal attack on them. Whether it's an ideology, mental illness, whatever the case may be, they think the world is coming down on their shoulders and they're going out for to revenge. Some will broadcast. And what's that mean? Some will actually tell people, hey, I'm going to go do this. We've seen this in quite a few of the school shootings, where the shooters have posted on social media, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And a lot of times their friends are, oh, we really didn't think it was serious. Or when they're doing the active after action event, interviews and stuff, they're interviewing these people and they go, well, we thought he was strange and yeah, we were concerned. But for whatever reason, nobody ever wants to tell anybody. And we've got to get away from that. So Texas DPS, and they have what's called the Fusion Center. So it's a collective of law enforcement intelligence agencies, local, state, federal, that there's a Fusion Center in just about every region in Texas: Austin, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, El Paso. And what it is anytime a threat comes in, these people, I mean, that's their job, is to analyze any types of threat. It really was set up after 9/11 for terrorist attacks. The old adage, see something, say something. We all remember that, right? We still say that, see something, say something. That's what it was for. And if you ever have a concern, you see something suspicious that's just not right, whether you're in your hometown or you're traveling anywhere in the state, you can go to iwatch.org. It's the letter I, WATCH.org. That'll take you to a website. It's mobile friendly. And then when you log into it, it gives you two choices. Is this about a school threat, or is this any type of suspicious activity? And they call these SARs, Suspicious Activity Reports. And depending on what that is, if you see someone that, is behind the Walmart and they're dressed all in black and they're pacing back and forth, and call 911. But if this is something you see, say you go every day, and you see this person, it looks like they're scoping out the store, or they're scoping out the school or the church, anything like that, you can actually submit a suspicious activity report. Still encourage you to call local law enforcement, call 911, but if this is just something you see over and over that just doesn't set right, call and make that report, or get online and make it. So again, I already introduced myself. I think we're all familiar with the church here. If we need the restrooms, they're going to be located in the education building. There should be an activity going on. If there's no one over there, I've got the key. Emergency exits. We got the two in the back, two doors in the back. You could go out these as well. Just remember, there are steps. There's no ramp. The only ramp we have, you need ADA compliance, is going to be in that back northeast corner over there on the main entrance over here. Breaks, we're going to get through this in an hour, but if you need to take a break, just go ahead, take a break, get what you need, a glass of water, whatever, and come right back in. Cell phone says, you heard mine go off, please silence your cell phone and don't be like me. So let's talk about some of the risk factors. And this is when it comes to active attacks, okay? Some of the risk factors that we see in some of these actors is there's a history of violence. Either in their environment, they grew up in a rough part of town, gang-infested area. Some of the immigrants have come over. You grow up in Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. A lot of violence in that area. And we got people from, warring countries that have been warring for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that violence is their everyday part of life. And they come over here and either they've grown up with it or they've been so accustomed to it that they're really numb to it. Exposure to violence. Not only living and growing up, but what about the household? Growing up in a house with domestic violence. That puts a severe psychological impact on a lot of people. People don't realize that people who grow up in and around family violence, whether it's directed at them or they witness it every day, creates post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? Which can also lead to substance abuse and dependence. A lot of the attackers out there are known to be substance abusers. But one of the key things that they found out when they do these interviews, that believe it or not, prior to committing their act, they go sober. And a lot of times they'll tell them, because I wanted my mindset to be in peak condition when I committed this. So they even know that it's so premeditated, so planned out, that they even like, okay, I'm gonna go sober after this date, so when I plan my attack and I carry it out, I'm in the best mindset as I can. So again, these people, they plan. And I tell everybody, mental illness. You have to have a mental illness to do something like this. I'm sorry, and it may be a combination of all these factors we just talked about. And there's a history of suicide. A lot of these individuals have been suicidal in the past. And they know that when they commit an attack like this, that they are probably not going to survive. In fact, they usually want law enforcement to kill them. They want to take as many people out as they can to right their perceived wrong, and then have law enforcement take them out. Some other risk factors that some of these individuals may have is stalking, harassing, or threatening behavior. Negative family dynamics and support system. Again, they grow up in a lot of these households. Single parent homes, they don't have the support. Parents may have psychological issues. They may have some other, grown up around physical violence, sexual violence. There's also a lot of isolation or instability. You always hear a lot of these people are the loners, right? He was always a loner. He or she was always a loner. They were a real introvert. They really didn't speak out, except maybe on a gaming platform, or you see a lot of social media. That's kind of their output. When they want to broadcast stuff, it seems more, especially nowadays, that it's on social media. And there's others that are concerned, whether they come to anybody with that concern or not. But again, you look at the post-action reports, and you see a lot of people will say, well, I was really concerned about him or her. There's a lot of red flags, So that's why I tell people, if something doesn't seem right about somebody, tell somebody. See if we can get them some help. Get them into counseling. Especially in the school systems where I work, that's one of the key things. Schools in Texas have to do what's called a behavioral threat assessment on a student that they feel, with whatever type of evidence they have, maybe committing an act of violence, whether it's on themselves, whether it's suicide, or against others, or both. No matter how minor, if they even say, and we take it all seriously. If someone says, I'm going to kill him, they may be joking, but we don't take it as that. And you'd be amazed that, for the last 6 years, I've been doing these behavioral threat assessments, and the last district I was at was really involved in them. And we've had a lot of circumstances, or a lot of situations, where these little flags came up, and we found out that there was a lot of abuse at the home. That there was sexual abuse happening, that there was physical abuse, there was neglect going on. And that's why I tell parents, when they hear these things, well, my kid got a behavioral threat assessment. I know so-and-so, their son or daughter got a behavioral threat assessment. It's not a negative stigma. It's actually a tool that we use to help them get them resources. I have seen more students, more families get the resources they need through a behavioral threat assessment than if they would have just slid under the radar until they snapped, as we like to say. And that's something we don't want anyone to do, whether they're a child or an adult. We always want to try to get them the resources and the help, because they may not know where to go. They may have never had those resources. They never ever had that help. Again, we talked about isolation. A lot of them are isolated in their families and stuff growing up. So this chart here is going to show you yellow is gun violence, small dots is less than 4 victims. 4 or more is the big yellow dots. Knives are going to be red. And then cars used for attacks are going to be in blue. So these are all the attacks by year. And you look in Texas, with few exceptions, most of them are major metropolitan areas. Again, you have like Sutherland Springs, and there's a few exceptions to that rule. But in that time frame, there was 567 active attacks. And a lot of these you may have never even heard, especially if it was less than 4. You may have never heard it on the news. It may have hit a local news station, but it didn't go nationwide. But you look at that map, that's quite a few mass attacks that have happened in the United States. Now, where are these happening? Where do you think most of these happen at? Well, there's a lot of people. Schools, right? So, where else do you think these happen? Think about some of the events. Big events, open air areas, right?
But a lot of ones in California.
Yeah.
That's where I'm from.
Yeah.
Originally prisons, a lot of them all-night shootings there are gang related.
Yep.
And it's big gang combined, so it's not an actual one person going out in a big group, it's multiple groups.
So, and that's good you brought that up, because I want you to note that on these stats, that's a lot of it. So if it's any shooting, stabbing, or mass casualty where there's 4 or more people, a lot of the gang shootings qualify for that. A lot of people don't realize, like school shootings, the way the FBI handles the stats, if a shooting occurs on school property, it's considered a school shooting. It could be at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning when there's absolutely no school students or anything, and it happened in a parking lot because they were doing a drug deal there. But if it happened there, that's a stat. So when you look at this, just keep in mind that this isn't just the terrorist type attack or the lone gunman going out randomly discriminating. I mean, those gang shootings are also involved, okay? And yes, even those do hit innocent people, innocent bystanders. But just remember, you know, like anything, stats are numbers that can be manipulated and things like that, okay? And obviously there's probably a lot more that aren't even reported that go on. So where do they occur? Businesses. Businesses are the number one area of attack. Disgruntled. Yep. You know, I know all of us in this room probably remember the term going postal because where did that term come from? Disgruntled post office workers attacking their place of business, their work.
Would that count, videos, venues,
Yep.
theaters?
Walmart,
Parks?
the movie theater, so in Colorado. Now, when you talk about some of the venues, outdoors is number 2. And over the last few years since these stats came out, outdoors is actually bumping up closer to the top. You know, you had the Las Vegas shooting at the big concert there. But then you had the Las Vegas and then New Orleans, we talked about the truck being driven, right? So those type of outdoor events, those large venues, the large crowds, that is why I absolutely hate going to big venues. Part of it is I worked for so many years as a young cop, working in Fiesta in San Antonio, working spring break down on the coast. It's just, I hated that because I saw a lot of what Americans can do that are not all great. You know, a lot of acts of violence, a lot of bad things happen in these outdoor events. You get a bunch of people together with a bunch of booze, and bad things can happen real quick. And not even, you know, like a preemptive attack. You got spontaneous attack. You look at 6th Street. How many shootings have been going on in Austin and 6th Street over the last year or 2? Quite a bit. There's usually at least one a month where there's 2 or more people that have been hit. So guess what? Those stats will start showing up on you. You see schools are down there, and then you have other places, okay? Military installations. There's actually been quite a few attacks at military installations over the last 10, 15 years. Now, what is the connection with the attacker? A lot of it, there is no connection. And part of that is on purpose. You know, when they do these attacks, I guess they don't really want to have that connection because what few people they have a connection with, they probably actually somewhat care for. So a lot of these random attacks are just totally random people that they have no emotional connection to. And you'll see that, you know, a smaller percentage do have some sort of connection to the people. And a lot of these you'll see like either the school shooting or the workplace violence types, acts of violence. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I think we all can relate to this, right? So looking at some past instances, UC Santa Barbara, California. Okay? Here the perpetrator killed 3 people independently by stabbing them at his residence and eventually proceeded to attacking people with a gun on campus and driving a car over others in the street. This is a prime example why we've changed calling these active shooter events to active attack events. Okay? We are seeing an increase in knife violence again. I belong to an international police organization. It's a fraternal organization where we talk, like, we still have pen pals across all over the world. And I like to talk to people from Europe and ask them about their violence, you know, over in the United Kingdom. They say knife violence over there is just as bad as gun violence here.
Oh, yeah, that's all they have.
Yeah.
It's very,
And I tell people,
very few people have guns here.
why as human beings we want to do harm to other human beings I have no idea. But we do. There's a,
People think guns are more of an evil, violent thing, but I think that taking a knife and physically stabbing somebody is
Oh.
more mentally deranged than pulling the trigger
yeah.
from
So,
the yard.
so guns create a disconnect
Yeah.
from the victim. And I think that's why so many youth, so many young adults get caught up in gun violence, because to them it's not up close and personal. You know, I can shoot somebody 30, 40, 50 yards away, and I may not even see them fall. I shoot them and I run away, and I never see the result. Stabbing somebody, that is up close and personal.
You heard that from the military, maybe, or back in the day when they had the, bayonets.
Yep.
They said, shoot somebody, that's one thing, but when they run up and you gotta stab with your bayonet, that's a whole different thing.
Yep. You know, one of the things that I do some forensics, digital forensics, like on cell phones and stuff. That's one of my jobs. And some of the stuff that I see, and there's a lot of these youth now that, I don't know if y'all remember the old show back on the VHS days, Faces of Death. You remember hearing that back in the 80s and 90s? It was a video collection of people dying. I mean, they caught people as they died and made a movie out of it. You know, well, thanks to social media and the internet, stuff like that is broadcast every day, and there's kids that are sharing this. Just today, I saw a video of a bunch of girls, and this was in another country. I think it was cartel related, and they murdered another woman, stabbed her, cut her throat, and it was brutal to watch. I had a hard time watching it. But that's how brutal some of these people can, and don't think that they won't do it. Again, we've seen the different knife attacks here at the schools, like here in Central Texas. We had the one just up the road here in Maynard where the student got killed. Colleen had a murder. You know, knife attacks are really starting to go on the rise. We had Orlando, Florida, the Pulse nightclub. An Islamic-inspired terrorist attack and killed 49 people. The shooter was connected to the nightclub and that he frequented the business as a patron. We just talked about Las Vegas, 2017, killing 59 people. Now, those that were in the Stop the Bleed class, we talked a little bit about this. And one thing I really didn't go into detail was a lot of the people, a lot of bystanders, there was a lot of off-duty police, fire, EMTs. They actually jumped in and started saving people's lives. They threw people in the bed of pickup trucks and drove them to the hospital because there was so much chaos, so much crowd that law enforcement and EMS couldn't get into the facility because it was just overwhelmed. So you never know when you end up having to be the hero.
That's why it's good. I think with the church, I think it would be good to notify the people that who has been through this training, one, who's lived it, you, me,
Yeah.
and who to look for help or direction if something does happen.
Yep.
Because if everybody did, you get people that, the one that do this job here, the one that does this job here, they had that authoritarian thing because of the church, but they could lead somebody into a bad situation.
Yep.
If something happens.
And I tell people all the time, if you don't know what's going on and you haven't been trained in any of this, you might want to step aside with somebody that's been through this. Now, I've been shot at least 6 times in my career that I can remember, and it's not fun. Let me tell you, when a bullet grazes your ear, you can feel the heat, and you hear the zzz going by. Yeah, that was 2 years out of the academy when that happened. It was not a fun feeling. New York City, one lone truckman killed 8 and wounded 15 using a Home Depot rental truck. People talk about bullets. You got a 4,500-pound bullet right there. That takes out a lot of people, especially in crowded events. I think we're all familiar with Southern Springs. One gunman killed 26, wounded 20 more. He was a dishonorably discharged Air Force veteran. The shooting began at the exterior of the church, and then shooting into it, and the attacker then moved into the church. And luckily for some of the survivors, a witness retrieved their own weapon and took matters into his own hands, and ended up shooting the suspect. So, what determines the number of deaths in an active attack situation? Well, there's several factors. First is how quickly the police can arrive. Second is target availability. You know, we talk about, you know, in the great gun control debate, and people want to limit magazines and stuff like that. You know, a 10-round magazine in a close proximity, I could empty a 10-round magazine in probably less than 2 seconds. With a pistol. Yeah. And I can reload my son, and again, I train on this, you know, through tactics and stuff. I can reload my service pistol in under a second and a half. Hey, you don't think these people don't train? You know, I remember in the academy, they used to show us videos from prisons that they would take the, you know, closed circuit television of seeing the inmates practicing how to defeat a holster. Even though they didn't have a holster, you would see them actually go through the motions on learning where the buttons are and how to disengage them off and take a pistol from a police officer. These people train. And I'll tell you the other thing is video games. Call of Duty. You know, talk to a lot of kids, and even watching paintball and stuff like that. You know, my kids have gotten into the Call of Duty stuff, much to my disliking, but they go to friends' houses and stuff like that. You know, and we're out there, and I'm doing training, and you know, sometimes I'll train at the house and learning how to do room entry and stuff just to keep my skills up. And I'll hear them, oh, Dad, that's just like you do in Call of Duty. The tactics that are in these games actually came from the military. They were originally designed, these games, these first-person shooting games were actually designed by the military, by the DOD, to desensitize soldiers before they went to combat. That was the whole intent of these. And now, it's a multi-million, if not multi-billion-dollar industry. And think about this, it was made to desensitize soldiers. So what are we doing to our young brains now? We're desensitizing them. 3 minutes. Statistically, it takes 3 minutes for local law enforcement to arrive. We talked about how fast I could put bullets down range within a matter of seconds. It's a lot of bullets in 3 minutes. And this is in a urban area, in a metro area. The response time here in Bastrop, Texas is actually going to be good. You go down to McDade, Red Rock, Rockney, Dale, guess what? They may have one deputy down there and he may be 10 minutes away. So depending...
You're going to get more here quicker.
Yep.
Than like Austin, you might have 1 or 2 officers within a 5-mile radius.
Yep.
Now,
Now,
and traffic and everything else.
I will tell you, having experience of some critical incidences, you know, in the school system, that, and it was a false alarm, but we ended up having about 20 outside agencies respond to one of our high schools toward the county line within a matter of minutes. It was comforting to see that Travis County will send people out if needed. But you got some other areas, you start getting out to Lee County, Caldwell County, a lot of these very, very, very rural areas where they don't even have that much law enforcement. We actually have quite a few law enforcement in Bastrop County compared to other rural counties. And let's face it, we're not rural anymore. The school district police I work for is the second largest police department, law enforcement entity in Bastrop County next to the sheriff's office. We actually have more officers than the Bastrop Police Department.
You always good to live in the city of the county, because
Yeah.
your sheriff's department's there.
Yep. But 3 minutes is your response time. Now, some of the stuff we're going to talk about actually comes from this disaster response and how we respond, or how most people respond to an active attack. So there's 3 stages of a disaster response. There's denial, there's deliberation, and then there's the decisive moment. So what's denial? Denial is the first stage of it? No, it's not. You hear a gunshot. You know it's a gunshot. But what do most people do? Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, I'm just as guilty. I mean, I know for a fact that's a gunshot, but I'm still processing with, is that really a gunshot? Then the next thing in my mind is how far away was it? And then it's what caliber was it? That's just my cop mind working, you know. But a lot of people do that. Or again, they're like, is that a firecracker? Is that a backfire? Or was that an actual gunshot? Watch this quick video on social proof. And let's see if my audio will work.
Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is in action. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill. How long before he gets help? Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is 2 conflicting rules. One is the rule we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have a group of, effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help, and it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? "4 minutes later, and 34
see, I mean, there's some setups like that where people will fake an illness or something for you to help, and then, they'll attack whatever. But the other thing too, think about how many of y'all been in downtown Austin and had to step over homeless people, you know?
See, if you stop and helped every time you saw that, you'd
Yeah.
never get nowhere.
When they lifted the camping ban in the city of Austin, I was still working downtown there. And when I say overnight, we were stepping over homeless people. We were. A lot of them were high, they had overdose. You try to get them help, they didn't want help. And it just got to the point where you walk by. Now, I would actually walk by and make sure they were breathing. I mean, I honestly would, and several people, we'd go eat lunch and stuff down around the Capitol, and as we're walking, we'd see somebody laying in the bushes and stuff, and we'd stop and just make sure they're breathing, and hey, are you all right? A lot of them, you woke me up, But you get that tired, that's why a lot of people don't want to stop and help either, but again, there's also that mentality of, I don't want to get involved. And we see that a lot as cops. People, I didn't see anything. I didn't see nothing. When I was a liquor agent with TABC, we'd be in the bars and they'd have a stabbing or a shooting, and we'd be doing an investigation. It's amazing. 85 people would be in a bathroom with 2 stalls. You'd ask them, well, where are you when this? I was in the bathroom. It's funny, somewhere there's 75 other people behind you. But people don't want to get involved. A lot of them are afraid of retaliation. Some of them are afraid of lawsuits. Well, if I do something, I may get sued. I think it's kind of ironic in that video. They talked about how, they put the nice clothing and when the woman was laying down, when she finally got help, did you notice who came to talk to her? What the guy was wearing, the construction worker, had a hard hat, had his construction clothes on. Yeah, it was somebody that's not even dressed like that individual as far as the type of clothing they were wearing. Deliberation. This is the next phase, is what we call the deliberation phase. We understand something bad is happening, but now we got to decide what to do. And we see this, but our brain is still trying to get caught up. Okay, we went through denial. It's like, oh, I heard that, I saw that. What do I do now? I explained the kind of deliberation phase is not just like major events. Our mind goes through the deliberation phase every time we drive a car. Why do we have the 2-second rule? Does anyone know? The 2 seconds, you're supposed to have 2 seconds of following distance.
You told me last time.
Yeah.
Take 2 seconds.
Takes about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds from the time you see the car in front of you to decide what to do and act. So you see the brake lights come on, you orient, right? Now you're like, oh, is that the brakes? What do? We just wanted a denial, right? They just hit the brakes, slam on the brakes in front of me. Oh, yeah, they did. Now we're deliberating. Okay, oh, I got to hit my brakes. But by the time you see the brake lights come on, it goes and processes. You're going to deliberate, even if it's for a quick second. And you may think, do I hit the brakes, or am I going to hit them, or do I just swerve around it? That's that deliberation. You're deliberating on what to do. But all in all, it takes 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds to do all that. That's why we have the 2-second rule. When we deliberate, we have 2 functions that our brains divide into. We have our normal human brain, which just consists of a lot of fine, complex motor skills. Then we have our lizard brain. This is your reflective, reactive brain. It's fixed. It runs off emotion. It's fast. It just happens. Call this our gross motor skills. I call it the caveman brain. When we teach defensive tactics, I used to be a defensive tactics instructor. Also did martial arts for over 20 years. And there's one thing you learn is when you do an art like, let's say, Aikido. I love the art. It's a beautiful art. A lot of joint manipulation. This is the stuff where you see them, they grab their wrist and they twist it, and they do this, and they twirl them around, and they do, they're flopping around like a fish. It's great if you practice that every day, 3 or 4 hours a day, and you become proficient in it. And you could probably use it in a combat situation. But when you don't train in combatives every day, A lot of our law enforcement may train 3 days out of a year, if not 3 days out of 10 years, that they get any type of defensive tactics. So they're going to revert back to what they remember the most. In a dynamic, high-stress situation, you're going to go to your basic motor skills. You're going to go to those cavemen, that lizard brain. It's going to be what? Survival mode. That's exactly what it is. What happens when a predator starts toward an animal? If the animal sees it, they run, right? Or they hide. They try to hide. Or if they're lucky, they're camouflaged enough, like the lizard, they could maybe change color and blend in. But they do it instantaneously. We as humans, we still try to use our human brain. And we still try to get too much complex emotion in there instead of just reacting the way we need to. So the human brain is fight, flight, or freeze. Stress response. So you got the different colors here. You got 60 beats per minute. That's what normally we're sitting in the recliner watching TV. No stress. We're relaxed. Nice weekend. We get a little stressed out. Something happens. It excites us. That car slams on the brake in front of us. And we stopped in time, but whew, I'm awake now because my heartbeat just went up to 90 beats per minute. When you get up to 120 beats per minute, that's like doing a full run, a full sprint. Okay? What happens to the human body when adrenaline kicks in, heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up? Does anybody know? First of all, you get tunnel vision. Your sight goes from here, all your peripheral, and this goes because we're going to that lizard brain. We're going to that primitive brain. We're focusing on the threat. Our mind says there's a threat, we're going to concentrate and focus on that. The other thing that happens is all our blood is rechanneled to our vital organs, which is why we start losing those fine motor skills. Our dexterity goes out the window. We may know all that Aikido, but when something happens and it's spontaneous, we're going to grab, we're going to punch. Or some people just freeze. When you get up to 150 beats per minute, by that time your body has pretty much overextended itself. You're running on pure adrenaline. Your breathing is going to start getting fast, which means there's going to be less and less oxygen going into your bloodstream. And then when you hit 175 beats per minute, there's a reason why that chart is black. Because that's what you're going to see when you pass out. You know, you hear the saying that somebody goes, I was so scared I messed myself. That actually happens. Because they get to that 175 beats per minute, and believe it or not, that is a primitive, last-ditch effort for the human body from when the saber-toothed tiger was going to eat man. You would soil yourself, and hopefully the animal would go, ooh, nope, that's not fresh. But that's why we void our valves, our bladder, when we hit these 175 beats per minute in our heart rate. Because our body is shutting down. This is where people black out, pass out, and freeze. Again, people are going to fight, they're going to flight, or they're going to freeze. So let's look at stress response. I want you to focus mainly on the woman with the stroller here in a minute. So, convenience stores being robbed. Trying to get her baby out of the stroller. Probably put that baby in and out of the stroller a million times, right? But what happened under stress? Couldn't do it. So let me ask you this, why did she just roll the stroller out the door with her? Because that fine motor skill started going out the window, and she was reverting back to, there's danger, mama bear kicked in, yep, I want to protect my child. So a little bit more about deliberation. This was the station nightclub fire. I want you to pay close attention to the exits. That's the main entrance slash exit. There is a secondary one on the kitchen. There's one by the main bar, and the one back here by the stage. So there was a tribute band playing some kind of metal, 80s metal rock. They had the pyrotechnics going, and they caught the acoustic insulation on fire on the stage. Okay? If anyone knows anything about fire, it spreads fast. Okay? But pay attention to everything here. I want you to watch. It'll give you a timer going as this fire erupts. Pay attention to how long it takes for the fire alarm and smoke detectors to go off, and how fast it is for people to respond. So there's the pyrotechnics. Look, you can already see the ceiling if they go back there. Look how fast that took. Took seconds to catch that thing on fire. Now, there's an exit right here. Now, granted, there's a fire right there. 30 seconds just for the fire alarm to go off. Now, the guy filming this was actually a professional reporter that was there to cover the band. People panicking, right? Where's my husband? Very, very, very tragic night. Look where everybody died. A majority, 31 people died right here. Why? Why did they die here? But why did they go there? Why to that exit? There was 3 other exits to use. Why this one? It's the one they knew. Where did they come in at? Right here at the entrance, right? Most people, when they walk into a building, they don't look at anything else. They don't look at any other ways of escape, where the fire alarm's at. How many of y'all know where the stop the bleed kits are at Walmart? I know I talked to stop the bleed kits. They're next to the AEDs as well as HEBs, and they're located in the front of the store. HEB is next to the customer service area, and the one at Walmart is on the northeast side of the building there. When you come out of self-checkout, and you go to the right, there's a stop the bleed kit. Yeah, it was actually after the El Paso Walmart shooting is when they started really putting those in retail establishments, big box stores.
I noticed one in school.
Now, schools have had it, they've had them since 2020, because 2019 is when House Bill 3 was passed. And
That's the first time I noticed.
yeah, that's when they were required by law to be in school. Every school has to have,
I knew what that was.
yeah.
That was from Walmart.
Yeah, Walmart and HEB both have it at the front of the school. But that's, again, situational awareness, okay? If you're in a restaurant, there's usually 2 entrance, 1 to 2 entrances. Usually they've got the main one, and like chili, they turn them into like the to-go order door, right? Those are also your exits, right? Where's the 3rd exit at? The kitchen. They got to get deliveries, right? Even though it may not be a marked exit, if both doors are blocked and you need to get out of there, go to the kitchen. Chances are you'll be able to get out. But you look at here, look at the people, and a lot of these died from smoke inhalation, but 9 here, 10 here, and there was an exit right here. All because people panicked, they deliberated, they froze, and they just didn't pay attention to their surroundings. people panicking at trying to literally being trampled over. It just, so many people, they started just clogging that main entrance way. So, when you're deliberating, you need to calm yourself. Sometimes just saying, all right, calm down, I got this. Breathe, take that deep breath. There's what we call combat breathing. Law enforcement, military, we refer to it as combat breathing, yoga breathing, I forgot the other names for it, but it's just taking a deep breath for about 2 seconds, holding it for 2 seconds, and then exhaling. And just repeat. And that helps calm you down. Now that I'm in an elementary school working, when we have kids that are having a really bad day and they don't really know how to contain their emotions anymore, I'll sit down with them on the floor and just, okay, breathe with me. Take a deep breath, let it out. You'll be amazed at how fast it'll calm them down. Shift your emotion. Sometimes I catch myself in the moment. I'm like, oh, no, calm down. I need to be the one, that looks like they know what they're doing, right? I'm in charge. I can't panic. Even though internally I may be panicking, I need to shift my emotion, because if I panic, what happens to everybody else? Me as a uniformed police officer, if I start panicking, what's the rest of the people going to do? They're going to panic too. I always like the bomb squad shirt. It says I'm a bomb squad technician. If you see me running, try to keep up. If you see me panic, you got a reason to worry. And I'll be the first to admit this bottom one here is something I'm trying to work on now, and staying fit. And a lot of us, not just physically fit, but mentally fit. Take care of your mental health, take care of your physical health. Script. What do we mean by script? How many of y'all walked into a place you've never been to before and go, okay, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do? How many of y'all been in this church right here and said, okay, if this happens, what am I going to do? That's scripting. Run it through your mind. Run a scenario. Practice it. Even if you practice it in your mind, practice, okay, have a mental vision of, I'm going to run down this way. I'm going to go here. If I can't get out, where are some improvised weapons I can use if I have to defend myself? Script and practice those things. So this guy here, Rick Rescorla, he was known for being one of the heroes of 9/11. Okay? He had worked at one of the Fortune 500 companies that was occupying the World Trade Center. He was prior military. He became a risk manager. And his big thing was train, train, and train. Drill, drill, drill. He required every employee to participate in fire drills no matter what their physical limitations were. And that meant going down, I think they were on the 60th floor. They were way up there in the World Trade Center, up in the towers. And he made everybody evacuate during fire drills. And I mean everybody. It got to the point where his supervisors, his superiors, were giving him a hard time about it, like talking about writing him up because it was taking too much time away from the workday. And he said, nope, they need to know what to do in an emergency. Why? Because he was at the first World Trade Center bombing when they blew the Ryder truck up in the basement. And he vowed after that he was going to make sure everybody made it out safe. Guess what? Everybody made it out safe, except for him. Why? Because he went back to clear the building to make sure, and then the building collapsed. But because of his training and his constant drilling, he saved the lives of every employee on that floor. This one here talks about Spencer Stone, Alex Garlados, and Anthony Sadler. These three men fought through fear, and they made the move to a decisive moment to defend not only themselves, but others on a train. They were overseas, over in Europe, and an attacker came on the train and tried to do a attack, and these 3 service members went ahead and engaged. So they made the decision to act. But I will tell you, if you make that decision to act, it's a do or die type thing. You may still die doing it, but if you hesitate, you're probably going to get hurt or killed. So if you decide that I'm going to defend myself or I'm going to defend others, follow through with it. So we're going to get more into the actual civilian response here. Okay. Again, denial, don't deny. I think most of y'all know what gunshots sound like. Like there right now by the brass that's falling on, you hear being ejected and hitting the ground. That sounds like it's like a 50 caliber shell. It's a big round. But the boom doesn't go with the. But how many of y'all have not heard gunshots before? Anybody? Not heard gunshots. Yeah. So you know it's a distinct sound. And depending what it is, you can sometimes almost hear the action working on the gun. And it's like, oh, that's not fireworks, right? Don't play dead.
We heard the first shots around 9:40 a.m. I was sitting on the wall of the classroom, so in the hallway, and I could hear the shots getting closer and closer very quickly. I mean, there was only a few seconds between the first time we heard them and when he actually walked in. To me, it sounded like an axe being taken to a piece of wood. And our teacher, she opened the door, and she peered outside, and she immediately shut the door, and she said, call 911. And right then, he walked in just seconds after. There's absolutely no time to think or to duck or to take cover, and people just kind of fell to the floor. And he immediately walked in shooting, and he went to the other side of the classroom, and he started going down the rows. He went down each row very quickly, very purposefully. And I remember thinking, your turn is coming. You're going to get shot. I mean, I didn't realize there was an active shooter, but I knew something bad was happening. He came back to our classroom 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he killed himself in the front of the class. In between each time he was there, you could just hear people crying and coughing, and the cell phone started ringing. When he was in our class, I remember trying not to breathe very much, so he couldn't tell I was alive. Because as my stomach was hitting the chair, I was thinking, you know, he can see me breathing, he can see me alive, and that was very scary. I'll never forget when the SWAT team first broke in at around 9:51. The officer in the front of the classroom said, "We have a lot of blacks in here." And at the time, I couldn't comprehend what he was talking about, but he meant triage codes. And I remember looking to the girl to my right and realizing, you know, what black meant. He looked over me and he said, first he said yellow, and then he changed it immediately. He said red, and that's when I first started panicking. I still couldn't speak. I was shot 3 times, lying on my back, and I remember thinking, what do you see? Like, what can you see on me that I can't, that you would change me from yellow to red? He killed 12 people in my classroom, including our teacher.
So Christina Anderson was interdicted death. We call this hiding the home. Because a lot of shooters, same thing we learned don't run, don't be hiding from your teacher, and no fighting, right? So they wanted to put the message out not just to the students, but the teachers as well, of it's avoid, deny, defend. But again, it's the same thing you'll hear run, hide, fight in other programs, and it's the exact same thing. So this is the Panama City School Board meeting. Now you're going to see an example here of if you're dedicated to doing something, you need to make sure you follow through and have a backup plan if it doesn't work.
Everybody in this room, behind that counter, hit the road.
Everyone in this room, you need to hit the road, except for the.
John, just let him talk. He's talking. John, go ahead.
With the book bag or her purse, right? And then she passes out. Okay? What are these school board members? I mean, they're just sitting there and you hear I guess it's the school board president's like, John, just speak your mind, John. Kind of like, oh, you're harmless. He's got a revolver. I don't think he's very harmless at that point. So what happens in a situation like that? Avoid, leave, get out of here.
I'm worried about picking up all this stuff.
Yeah.
Picking up their bags and all that stuff.
If somebody came into this church and came in with a gun without even firing it, they walk in with a rifle, and you're sitting over here, say, you're over here, Lynn, at the violin, and you see it, a lot of people just stare at it. I'm like, wow, he's got a gun. Because what are we doing? We're processing, right? But the minute you go, oh, wow, he's got a gun, I'm out of here. Call 911 and get out the door as fast as you can and take people with you. That's why it's important to know your exits, even if they're not marked. Know your exits. And again, call 911. So, armed robber goes into a convenience store. Now, these people know how to avoid. They are getting the heck out of there. Okay? I teach my kids, so if they're still in the school system, I'm like, hey, look, if you're outside, if you're on the football field or whatever, and you hear gunshots coming from within a building, don't go into that building. Run. Okay? When they were in middle school, I had to deal with a friend of mine that lived a couple blocks away that if something happened at the middle school, that my boys were to run to his house and his wife. That was our deal. He was good with it. Because I don't want them anywhere near that situation. Consider secondary exits. So in this case, there's actually two people here. There's one here and one here. Retail establishment was being robbed. They ran, but they panicked. They could have went right there. There's the push bar. They could have went right out that door. But they froze, and they're hiding back there in that corner. There's also a ladder to the roof. If you can't run out of there, deny them the opportunity to get to you. Lock the door. Turn out the lights and stay out of sight. This is what we call a lockdown at school. Lock lights out of sight. If you're in an area with windows, you want to try to get along the wall as best as you can. And what we teach teachers to do is in their classroom is you walk up to the door from the hallway, but the door closed, they got that little window in the door. Stick your head there, look to the right, look to the left, and there's going to be an area where you can't see. There's going to be a void there. That's where you want your students, where they can't be seen. And I've even told teachers, take painter's tape and mark out just little pieces of tape where you kind of know where that safe zone is. That way in a situation, they can get there. Now I will tell you that because we're teaching this at all grade levels now, and we're doing it in a way that doesn't panic the kids or anything like that, But they develop muscle memory. By the time they get into middle school and high school, when we have brand new substitutes or brand new teachers come in that have never been in education before, I've seen fifth graders and even fourth graders teach substitutes our emergency response drills. So barricade the door if you don't have a lock. The heavier the barricade, the better. Okay? If you have an exterior opening door with, and I'm going to use, so over in the education building, that glass door, it's got the self-closer on it. If you don't have a way to lock that, you can take a belt or a strap, a nylon strap works really, really well, and just wrap it around that self-closer, because that self-closer operates on a scissor like this, and if it's belted shut, it can't open. We actually have, the fire department gives us their old fire hoses, they chop them up when they're out of service, and we use those and slide them over the self-closer to keep people coming in if we have to. I'll see if I can get some. Yep. Yep. So they didn't go out the doors, they didn't go up the ladder, but they could have found a little bit better place to hide. There's a big bag right there they could have hid under, right? Right there. They could have barricaded, taken these and barricaded the door. But look, there's so much stuff here. I guess in the melee they went running and knocked stuff over. This whole door won't even shut now. So they can't even lock it. That's just showing that sometimes simple door stops can work. I don't like the soft rubber ones because they're pliable enough that you can like stick them in the door jamb and it'll prevent the door from opening, especially the harder plastic type. But the soft rubber ones are still pliable enough. But in a pinch, if anything, it slows them down. So what active attackers want is easy access. They don't want to have to fiddle with anything. There's not been a school shooting where the shooter has gotten through a locked door. Could they? Probably. They probably could have shot the lock or whatever, but they're just going to move on to the easy target. They're not looking to spend a lot of time anywhere. They want easy, accessible targets. I just talked about the outward opening doors, putting that tension sleeve or ropes around the self-closer, or even just holding the door. You don't want to sit there and hold the handle in front of the door because, believe it or not, bullets will go through doors. So let's say you don't even have a self-closer, but you've got one of those L-type handles, the long handles. You can tie a rope to it or take a belt and stand off to the side and try to hold that door from someone coming in. Then you have these commercially available locks. There's a video on social media on Facebook that, in fact, it's this exact lock system that shows a school using it. The bad thing is it's in a panic mode. So this part of it right here is actually kept up on the wall in like a little plastic bin that you run, you grab it, you close the door, and then you take this thing, slide it in the slot, and it keeps the door from being open. Now we just talked about fine motor skills, right? Does that take some fine motor skills to do that? That is why I'm not a big fan of them. Do they work? Yes. But under a high-stress situation, would just anybody be able to do that? Probably not. So I'm going to skip over this video here. It's just another interview. They're interviewing a teacher at one of the school shootings, and she talked about how she selfishly, held the door, locked the door, and stood in front of her kids, and her and the kids survived on that. And it's actually one of those things, I really hate it when the media brings up emotions from victims. I mean, they lived through all that, and that's why I really don't like that video, because, I mean, you just see the emotion. She's going back to that day. So, in the deny phase, if you decide you're going to defend yourself, okay, you got to get in position. If you're going to grab the gun, you got to know where to grab it. You got to be prepared to fight and shift motion. Okay? Stand near the door, not across the room. You want the element of surprise. Okay? Plus, the farther away you are, the more likely you are to get shot. It's a fight for your life. Okay? And it's not a fair fight. Use improvised weapons, gouge, kick, pull. You know, I remember I used to teach women's self-defense, and the thing they used to teach when it came to a male aggressor is grab, twist, and pull. And we're not talking about their nose either. Okay? You got to get down and dirty. Eye gouging, it's kind of like stabbing somebody. It's up close and personal, but you know what? If it means me going home to see my family, I'll pluck somebody's eyeball out if I have to. As gross as that sounds. Because I want to go home to be with my family. If you decide to grab a gun, you want to grab the gun from the front, standing in front of it? No. That's why we say position yourself to the side. If they come through with the gun, you actually want to come in from behind it and try to grab it that way. And again, that's where sometimes just concentrate on the gun. You got to have that mindset of he's going to be trying to pull that gun away. Reach up, stick your fingers in his eyeballs. Why you still got another hand on the gun, if you can. Okay. Here's another store robbery. Watch the guy here at the wine rack. Improvised weapon, right? He's got his wine bottle ready to go. But watch this lady right here. Now, I don't know if she's playing dead or if she actually passed out. She's kind of twitching there. Don't be like her. Everyone's gone now, except her. She's still lying there on the floor. Defend and fight. This is what I talk about. If you're going to defend yourself and you plan on fighting, Lieutenant Brian Murphy was a police officer that engaged with a shooter at a Sikh temple. And he got shot multiple times. You see that big scar on his neck. A couple of them he got shot in the throat, the head, the chest, took multiple gunshots. And you watch the video and watch the story on it, and he'll tell you that he decided he was not going to die that day, that he was going to fight. And people with other mindsets of, I'm going to give up, probably would have died. It's all about that mindset. Again, check your surroundings. What you do matters. Avoid, deny, defend, run, hide, fight. So here's a little flow chart on decision making. An attack starts. Find your primary exits. You got one, get out of there. You don't have a primary exit, it's time to deny. Lock those doors. Prevent them access. Deny them entry. Are there other exits? Is there that delivery dock out back? The receiving door for the kitchen? Try to go out there. Yes? Well, guess what? You went back to square one and you're avoiding the whole situation. Call 911. But if there's no way out, there's no escape, there's nowhere to hide, you need to defend yourself. So if you remember the story about Virginia Tech, Norris Hall, shooter came in, chained the door shut on the bottom floor, went up to the second floor, and begun killing people in classrooms. These are the classroom numbers. That young lady that we had the interview with, remember she was in room 211. So 206, 2 people were non-injured, yellow is injured, red is deceased. Look at room 211. Remember we talked about locked doors? Do you think these doors were locked? Now, pay attention to 204. 204, people jumped out the window. It was the second story, but they jumped out and got away. This was the professor. He stood in front of the door and held it shut so his students could get out. He was also an Auschwitz survivor, Holocaust survivor. But look at the rest. This is why we tell everybody, lock doors save lives. Okay? Now, not all schools are required to have interior door locks here at Bastrop ISD. We require interior doors to be locked at all times when students are in the classroom. We've spent probably close to $1 million on retrofitting locks.
Well, I noticed one thing over there, at Blue Lot Elementary. Anybody could walk in through that fence
Yep.
to the playground. It's terrible.
And the district and the school, so fencing is ridiculously expensive. So that's why we're required that all exterior doors are to be locked at all times. You either have to have a badge to come in or you have to have a key to get in. And we've taken away a lot of the keys. Only principals and assistant principals have the key. Everybody else has to have their card reader to get in. And we're working on fencing. A lot of districts are working on fencing. And a lot of that comes from the superintendents and stuff. Now, I'm not talking about this district, I'm talking just generally. And their mindset, they're like, well, we don't want our schools to look like a prison.
You don't have to have them look like a prison.
No.
Nice high fence and.
Yeah, and there's ornamental fence. You know, you go to like Bastrop Middle School here, they have the ornamental fence, but it's 8 foot tall, 7 foot tall. It's bigger than me. I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
So you're seeing a lot of that as the money and the funds come in. It's hard to do the larger campuses, but if you go to Bastrop High School, you're seeing fencing going up. Because we learned that, you're right, keeping people out and keeping them from coming in the first place is the first line of defense. So these are the Virginia Tech casualties, those that were shot by room number. 205 actually was able to lock the door. So when police arrive, what do? First of all, follow the commands, show your palms, and do not move. If you have a concealed firearm, let's say you help stop the shooter, you shot him. When we get the call as a police officer, we get a call that says, person with the gun at XYZ location, people down, whatever the case may be. We'll also get about 6 different descriptions of that one person. Because people are panicked, or they may see the person, the good guy with the concealed gun that took action and stopped the shooter, but next thing they know, they're calling police and there's a guy still in here with the gun. So when we arrive on scene, we are taught to eliminate the threat. So if we see somebody in plain clothes with a pistol or a rifle or a shotgun out, guess what we're taught to do? Eliminate the threat. So we even tell plainclothes police officers, we teach a course that if you respond to an active shooter event or you're off duty and you're plainclothes and the uniforms arrive, holster your gun or set it down, listen to their command. Because there's been some shootings, we call it blue on blue shooting, friendly fire, where the off-duty cop was arguing and, you can say I'm a cop all you want, you ain't got a badge or anything on you right now. A bad guy could say that. We're not going to take that chance. So if you're a concealed weapons holder, holster or put the gun down the minute the cops come in because you don't want to be a victim. Again, our focus as police is stop the killing, stop the dying, and evacuate the injured in that order. One of the hardest part of our training is knowing that if I have to go and take down an active shooter, I'm probably going to have to bypass injured and dying people. Because I'm no good if I stop to help render aid and that person is still shooting people down the hall. So my job is to go hunt the devil and stop the devil from doing further damage. At that point, we're going to bring teams in and we're going to help the victim. We're going to get them medical care. We're going to evacuate them. The bad person, they're last on the totem pole there. Way down at the bottom of the list. So this video just shows an actual example of police response on an active shooter, and they're evacuating everybody out of there.
Are you ready? If you're not cool, I'm not walking a bit. Sir?
So he's talking to his partner. If you're not ready, if you're not cool, you're not going to walk out.
All the way to that deputy? You're going to make a left or deputy back? Thank you. Try to relax. Everyone try to relax. I'll take a bullet before you do, that's for damn sure. Just be cool, okay?
And of course, somebody had to videotape the whole thing. You know. Medical, okay? I talked about my job as a police officer, as a first responder, or an active shooter scene, is to eliminate that threat. If I'm coming up in the second wave, then I'm going to start doing medical. But there's going to be a delay of EMS. A lot of EMS will not go into a hot zone. If we're still unsure if there's a shooter involved, they will not go in. I know the protocol and policy for the local EMS company here is they will not go into, they will stage until it's clear. Until law enforcement says it is 100% safe to come in, they'll come in. Now our firefighters that are trained EMTs, that's a little bit different story. They're used to running into burning buildings and running into danger, and they've said, yeah, we'll come in. If people need help, we'll come in right after. And this is why I tell people seek additional training, CPR, first aid, and stop the bleed. Okay. This is going to be the next thing I'm going to be training on. Will be a stop the bleed class. That will be next month's training, and it's very simple. It's nothing complex. But I'll tell you, stop the bleed training is probably the best first aid you can get, because it's not just about gunshot victims, stab victims. We've used them more on car crashes. In fact, the first time I deployed a tourniquet was on a guy that got his leg chopped off on a motorcycle crash on 95 on the way to Elkhorn one morning. Back when I was with the railroad police, we run everybody through what they call self-aid buddy aid or combat casualty care. It was stop the bleed training, a little bit more advanced. Everybody got issued tourniquets. One of our officers that was stationed on the border, within the first 3 weeks, he ended up applying 2 tourniquets on 2 separate occasions, and both of them were car crashes. You're more likely to need a tourniquet in a car crash than you would anywhere else. But it's good to have one, and it's good to know how to use them and how to stop the bleed. So again, this is the course that I'll be putting together for next month. If you have a business or you work for a company or anything like that, you're going to have some personnel issues. Expect mental trauma. Not just from everybody else, but from yourself as well. I don't care how good you say, oh, I don't need help. I'm good. This doesn't affect me. It'll affect you in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Develop a critical incident stress management plan. If you work at a business or you own a business, you don't have one. If you're one of the secondary victims of PTSD or having any type of mental distress, go get help. I'll tell you right now, I'll be the first to tell you that I've gone to seek counseling on some of the stuff I've seen before, because I realize it's stuff that I don't need to be taking inside and keeping it inside, because those demons do come out. If you experience something that's very traumatic, very stressful, go see a counselor or a therapist. I'll be the first to recommend it. Y'all remember the bus fatality that we had last year down in the south part of the county? You know, it was a neighboring county's school district, but our school police were the first on scene. And they had to render aid to what ended up being one of the fatalities. And let me tell you, it leaves a lasting impact. And our policy is you will get mental health if you need it. But we have a great emotional support program. So don't be afraid, okay? And finally, don't name them. Don't talk about the bad people. You notice I've never once mentioned any of the suspect shooters' names, any of the active attackers' names. We don't want to do that. There's people that literally idolize them, and we don't need to foster that. We will talk about the victims. So in summary, talked about active shooter events and what they are. Remember, active shooter is mass murder. Talked about disaster response, the lizard brain versus the human brain, right? gross motor skill versus fine motor skills, and how to respond. Fight, flight, or freeze. And finally, avoid, deny, defend. We talked about the Virginia Tech case study, and what did we learn from that? Locked doors saves lives, right? And playing dead doesn't always work. Any questions? Well, that's my presentation for today. I greatly appreciate it. And would someone like to close us in prayer? If not, I will. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here today. We appreciate all the blessings you bestow on us, and please watch out for everybody. As this day and age, we never know what people are thinking, what they're going to do. All the outside influences, the evil that comes in. We pray that you give us strength to help those that need help. And should we ever have to use this type of training, that you give us the strength to overcome evil. And we pray in your